What a week of Premier League football that was. Welcome back to the Premier League predictions, where I go through every game week and I predict how I think the matches will go and normally get it wrong. As we do in every episode, we're going to go back, look at the past week's matches, see how they went, see how I predicted, and see if we got any correct. And then we'll move on to the upcoming matches. So we're going to start off with Friday night's fixtures, and we start off with Aston Villa versus Leeds United. I predicted it to be a 1-0 draw, but it's actually 2-1 to Villa. Aston Villa continued their good run under Emery as they held on to keep 3 points in Birmingham. Bamford pulled a goal back for Leeds, but it just wasn't enough. Villa have actually just lost Danny Ings to West Ham, so it's going to be interesting how they fill in that role, if they bring anyone in at all. Then move on to Saturday's fixtures, and we start off with the Manchester derby. I predicted 3-2 to Man City. It was actually 2-1 to United, and honestly, it was probably the best Manchester derby we've seen in a while. Both teams were evenly matched, but it was the red side of Manchester that won for the first time in a very long time. It was a very contentious call to give United's first goal, but they deserve the win, to be fair, and Rashford continued his fine form. But yeah, there's a very contentious offside call, whether Rashford actually touched the ball or interfered with play enough for it to be given offside, but the goal was given, so there's nothing you can do about that now. But yeah, it's quite contentious. Then move on to Wolverhampton Wanderers versus West Ham United. I predicted 1-0. It was actually 1-0 to Wolves. The West Ham nightmare continues this time as they fall to Wolverhampton Wanderers, a relegation rival. This lifted Wolves out of the relegation zone and dropped West Ham in it, but both teams are still in trouble. This was a massive 6-pointer for Wolves. You know what? They claimed it. Then move on to Nottingham Forest versus Leicester City. Now, I predicted 2-1 to Nottingham Forest, and it was 2-0. Unbelievable. Absolute scenes. The improvement we've seen Forest undergo since that 4-0 loss to Leicester has been brilliant to see. Forest gave Leicester a really tough game and deserved their win. Can we please talk about how good Gibbs, White and Johnson are? My god. And I do want to mention, in last week's video I called it an East Midlands derby. From a Forest fan's perspective, it's not a derby. It just worked well in the theme of the video because we had two derbies as well this game week. So while I don't think it's an East Midlands derby personally, it just worked well for the video. And then move on to Brighton and Hove Albion versus Liverpool. I predicted 3-1 to Brighton. It was actually 3-0. And it was another De Zerbi masterclass against Liverpool, but this time they actually won. Despite summer signing Gakpo making his Premier League debut, him and the Liverpool squad could not get into this match, and Brighton were dominant throughout. This Brighton side is another league above where they were last season. I think De Zerbi has come in and really made this squad a force to be reckoned with. I'd be surprised if they didn't get some form of European football next season. They deserve it. Nice. Class. Okay. And then move on to Everton versus Southampton. I predicted 2-0 to Everton. It was actually 2-1 to Southampton. Another relegation scrap for Southampton, but this time they won. Southampton have seemingly been buoyed by their cup win over Manchester City and look to reignite their fight for Premier League survival. They beat Everton in their own backyard thanks to James Ward-Prowse and his brilliant free kicks. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. They beat Man City in the cup and suddenly it's like they can take on anyone. I wouldn't be surprised if they survive the season, to be fair. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on with the season. If they survive, fair enough. If they don't, well, we saw it coming, didn't we? And then we move on to Brentford versus Bournemouth. I predicted 3-0 to Brentford. It was actually 2-0. Brentford continued to climb up the table with an assured win over a struggling Bournemouth side. Tony returned from injury with a goal from the spot before Jensen finished off the travelling side. Yeah, Tony, he's been out injured, steps right back into the squad and scores. You know, who would have bet on that? And then move on to Sunday, and we start off with Chelsea versus Crystal Palace. I predicted 1-0. It was actually 1-0. Both teams were actually quite evenly matched, with a Havertz header being the only thing to separate either side. Kepa and Guaita made some brilliant saves to keep their scoreline tight, but ultimately Chelsea ended their winless streak, which, you know, is good for them. They needed a win, and they got one. Then move on to Newcastle United versus Fulham. I predicted 3-1 to Newcastle. It was actually only 1-0. The Geordies continued their brilliant Premier League campaign with a win over Fulham. There could have easily been a draw if Mitrovic didn't somehow mess up his penalty. Now, that's a rule I'd never heard of until that match. I think it's quite a stupid rule, to be fair, but I can see why it's in place. And it's honestly just really unlucky for Fulham. They deserved a draw, in my opinion. Then move on to Tottenham versus Arsenal. I predicted 3-2 to Arsenal. It was actually 2-0. Now, this was a tasty North London derby as Arsenal won their first back-to-back North London derbies in a very long time. And it just goes to show how far this Arsenal side has come since appointing Arteta. They dominated Spurs and it was a Lloris error that gifted Arsenal the lead before Odegaard sealed it. I wouldn't say it was a great game to watch from a neutral point of view, but Arsenal played some good football and really just outplayed Spurs. I think we all predicted that would happen though, to be fair. And then move on to the Wednesday match. This was a rescheduled match, but it was Crystal Palace versus Manchester United. And I predicted 3-1 to Manchester United. It's actually just 1-1. Now this was a largely dominant performance from Manchester United, but they just fell apart at the death from a beautiful Elise free kick. I don't think you can be mad at conceding this because it was precision. We saw Weghorst make his debut. He didn't really do much, but he did only score 2 goals for Burnley in the Premier League, so it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. Manchester United are a more attacking side than Burnley were, so I imagine he's going to get a lot more service and a lot more chance to score goals, so we'll just have to see how that plays out. It's kind of mad that Burnley are loaning Manchester United a player when they're in different leagues, but you know what? I'm here for it, to be honest. And finally, we move on to Manchester City versus Tottenham. I predicted 3-1 to City. It's actually 4-2, and this was a brilliant game. I'd honestly say it was the best game of the week, as it saw Spurs go 2 ahead just before the break, before then falling apart in the second half. City fought back to keep their title bid alive and scored 4 goals, just to make sure Spurs were done. Yeah, what a crazy match. So that was a look back at my Premier League prediction for Game Week 20, and as you saw, I didn't get any right. But I think that's to be expected at this point. So we're going to look forward to these matches coming up. I'm going to start with the Saturday fixtures, and we're starting off with Liverpool versus Chelsea. We're graced with a very interesting match to kick off this game week, which has been dubbed El Shitico, and with both teams playing how they are, it honestly seems like they could both lose this match. Both teams currently find themselves stranded in mid-table spots, a far cry from their positions last season. Both teams also enjoyed some great clashes last season with quite a few goals, but I think this is going to be a very far cry from those matches we saw. It's really anyone's match in my opinion, and I'm not sure either side could win it, so I'm going to say 1-1. I do reckon it'll be a draw between the two sides. Both are struggling this season, aren't banging in the goals like you'd assume they would be, and that's reflected in their results. Both Klopp and Potter are under pressure from the fans, but I think they have the full support of the board behind them, so I can't see them being sacked this season. But yeah, they're not performing how you'd expect them to be. It really seems that losing Mane has really affected Liverpool, and the amount of fucking strikers Chelsea have scored is mental, and they're just not banging in the goals, so yeah, it's probably going to be a 1-1 affair in my opinion. Then move on to Leicester City versus Brighton and Hove Albion. A struggling Leicester side host high-flying Brighton in a match I'm sure Leicester fans would rather they not play. Leicester are struggling this season, which has not been helped by a growing injury list. They're really suffering from the lack of James Maddison, and that can be seen in their current run of form. Brighton, on the other hand, are on fire, even without their top goal scorer, who's just moved to Arsenal. I think they'll be fine without Trossard. They've managed the last couple of matches without him, so I'm going to say 4-1 to Brighton. Brighton have shown they can score many goals no matter where they play, and it'll be no different here at the King Power. Leicester have not been great this season, especially in defence, and this is something Brighton are going to exploit to the max. Cries will only grow louder for Rodgers to be sacked. I believe he's had a chat with the board over this as well, and it's looking like a matter of time before he's gone. I doubt this game will be the nail in the coffin for him, but he needs to get them back to winning ways. As I said, Brighton are on fire, so losing to them isn't exactly like a, oh, you should go. Losing to Forest isn't, oh, you should go. Then move on to Southampton versus Aston Villa. This is a buoyed Southampton side who are hosting a Villa side who've been playing some decent football under Emery. I think Southampton will be confident going into this match, and there's a chance they could get a result here. Now Villa are the strongest side in this clash, but are also nursing a couple more injuries than Southampton. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Southampton are rooted to the foot of the table at the moment, but with recent results they'll be full of confidence that they could save their season and get some vital points here. However, I'm going to say 2-1 to Aston Villa. I know I bigged up Southampton, but as I've said, Villa are the better side in this clash, and I'm sure they're top of the Saints at St Mary's. Performances under Emery have been all over the spectrum recently, but they're currently sitting 11th in the league and look to be stable as well. I imagine Southampton will manage goal, but I can't see them shutting out Aston Villa, even without Danny Ings. As I said, he never really got going at Villa, so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, but I do think Villa will be able to topple Southampton. And then we move on to West Ham versus Everton. Another relegation scrap for Everton in a clash I've dubbed El Sacchio. Both managers are under pressure from their respective fans, as results have not been great for either side as of late. Both sides look really lacklustre at the moment, and as things stand, it's a relegation scrap. So it's likely to be a pretty close match with tensions running high. Since the return of Premier League football, West Ham and Everton have been really struggling. Could be a very important result come end of the season, as it would lift either side out of the relegation zone as things stand, a real 6-pointer. I'm going to say 1-0 to West Ham. I think West Ham have the best chance of winning this match. They have a stronger squad and a much shorter injury list that should give them the advantage over the Toffees. It's likely to be a really interesting atmosphere as both fans are not happy with their respective managers. and as I said, it's likely to be a tense affair. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch because I don't think either side is going to be going like balls to the wall, playing some amazing football. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top because it could end the other manager's career at their club, to be honest. And then we move on to Bournemouth versus Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest are travelling to the seaside with hopes of avenging the reverse fixture. That was not a good day. Since then, the squad has gelled, whereas Bournemouth's performances have caused them to slide down the table. Both sides are nursing quite a few injuries at the moment, with Forest looking like they'll be without first choice keeper Henderson, which fills me with dread because I don't rate Hennessy at all. But this is his time to step up, and if he proves me wrong, he proves me wrong. On recent form, Bournemouth have not been looking good, but always do well against us, unfortunately. But I'm going to say this is the one that breaks the curse. I'm going to say 1-0 to Forest. I think we can scrape a win here and end the bad run we've had against Bournemouth as of late. This Forest side has really come together, and that can be seen in their latest performances. Bournemouth will be a good test for us, as it will show us how far we've come since that fateful clash. We've also signed Danilo and Chris Wood, both of who should be eligible for this clash. I do reckon we'll see Chris Wood on the bench. Yeah, I think this is a good game for him to introduce himself to Forest fans, really. Hopefully we can win this because it'd be a massive, massive point for us. It'd be a massive 3 points for us if we can beat Bournemouth, which hopefully we can claim. And then move on to Crystal Palace versus Newcastle United. Palace were largely ineffective against Manchester United, but Elise fired in an absolute beauty of a free kick. Newcastle United haven't been as dominant as they have been previously this season, but Palace's form is up and down. They're still struggling to score goals, only scoring 18 this season compared to Newcastle's 33, which is really night and day. I'm going to say 3-0 to Newcastle. I can't really see Palace getting a goal out of this match. Newcastle has been really solid defensively this season. I think they're one of the best sides on clean sheets and the like, so it's going to be very tough to score against them. And I think they have more than enough to keep out Palace. I don't even see the home atmosphere helping Palace here, and they could really do with some winter reinforcements. I always bang on about the Selhurst Park atmosphere, but it doesn't really seem to have helped many sides this season, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Then move on to Sunday's fixtures, and we start off with Manchester City versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. After looking like they could lose to Spurs, City fought back and made sure they claimed all 3 points, with Haaland among the goals after going 2 games without a goal, which is bad news for Wolves. Wolves played well to gain 3 points over West Ham, but this City side will be a very different beast altogether. These games are normally quite high scoring, mostly on the City side. Wolves haven't had the best start to this season and are struggling for goals and points in a bid to retain their Premier League status. This City match won't be easy for them though. I'm going to say 4-0 to City. Wolves are floating around the relegation zone, but their form has seen an uptake since their new manager came in. However, I think they'll struggle to do anything to this City side. Haaland has scored more goals than Wolves have this season. In fact, I think they're the lowest scoring side this season with 12 goals, which is not great when you're fighting relegation. I don't think Wolves will get anything out of this City clash, but you never know. Lopetegui could come in and absolutely mastermind a brilliant performance from Wolves. It remains to be seen, but my money's on City, to be honest. Now move on to Leeds United versus Brentford. The high-flying Bees travel to Ellen Road to face a struggling Leeds side. Recent results haven't been great for Leeds, but that's not to say they have a bad squad. Their squad is full of potential, and they've been active in the winter window so far, bringing some quality players. Brentford have been playing some good football and have got some great results in recent clashes. This will be a good match to watch as both teams have some real talent and play football that is good and attractive to watch. And with that Ellen Road atmosphere, it's looking like it'll be a good clash. I'm going to say 2-1 to Brentford. I think Brentford's good run will continue with Leeds giving them a good game. Both sides aren't suffering from an extensive injury list, so should be fielding their strongest sides. Brentford will give Leeds a lot of issues, especially with their attacking players and the threat they can pose. Going to cause a lot of issues for Leeds, who are quite leaky in defence at the moment. I can feel the discontent with Marsh grow, as some fans have already turned against him. I don't think he should be given up on just yet, because he has brought in some more players and it needs some time to get them into his system. But I think Leeds will survive another Premier League season. It's just going to be a tough match against Brentford. Then we move on to Arsenal versus Manchester United. Now this is a huge top of the table clash, and you feel like there could be an upset on the cards. Arsenal and United have had brilliant seasons so far, with Arsenal currently sitting top of the table and United battling Newcastle for third. When I say an upset, I really mean that either team could win it. United have been playing some really good football under Ten Hag, just as Arsenal have under Arteta. It should be a brilliant clash with two amazing sides, hopefully showcasing their full skills and potential. However, it is a top of the table clash, and so tensions will be high, and I can imagine it will look similar to Arsenal versus Newcastle. I'm going to say 1-0 to Arsenal though. I think Arsenal will remain on top after this clash. I mean, I think whatever the result is, they remain on top, but I think they'll take another 3 points over City. These top of the table clashes are always tight affairs because some of the stakes involved are so high, and while the fans would love to see some free-flowing, attacking, high-scoring football, it's unlikely in these huge showdowns. I think Arsenal just have that bit more quality and skill over the United squad, especially as they'll be without Casemiro, who's going to be a huge miss for Manchester United. He's been a brilliant player for them so far this season. And then our final clash is on Monday, and it is Fulham versus Tottenham Hotspur. Another London derby, so to speak, as Spurs attempt to reignite their Champions League push. Both sides sit next to each other in the table, just occupying a top 6 spot. Fulham have been on a really good run as of late, whereas Spurs have been up and down. It'll be quite a tough one for either side, as they do appear quite evenly matched, even though Spurs are a better side on paper. I think it comes down to the weakest aspect of the Spurs side, and that is the defence. Lloris isn't a great keeper either, and I think his time at Spurs could be up. They're eyeing for a replacement pretty much as we speak, so I think Lloris could leave in the summer. I think this weakness could be exploited by Fulham's players. They've got some really good attacking output, so they're gonna be playing games with Tottenham. I'm gonna say 2-1 though. I do think Spurs will manage to beat Fulham, but it will not be an easy match at Craven Cottage. Fulham have played very well this season, as I've mentioned, and look like they've cemented themselves in the league, shredding that yo-yo title. Both teams have quality up top. Players like Mitrovic and Kane getting service, they will score, but it's whether they get that service. I'm anticipating a good clash between these two London-based sides, and while I can't see it being a goal fest, it should still be some good football, but I think Spurs will just manage to nip it in the bud. So yeah, these have been my Game Week 21 Premier League predictions. If you have any of yourself, please leave them down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking. And yeah, let's see how many I get right this week. Anyway, I've been O2GT. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, be sure to leave a like, subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.